Bar pilots guide cargo ships in and out of San Francisco Bay, and now that ships are getting bigger, they are demanding more money.
Yeah, they claim it's a safety issue, but the shippers, they don't buy that. ABC 7 News I-Team reporter Dan Noyes is here now with an exclusive investigation.
Well, Dan and Carolyn, under state law, shipping companies have to use bar pilots when their ships come to San Francisco. The state even sets the fees the pilots can charge. But now the pilots want a raise, and shippers say they make enough. Last year, each bar pilot brought home $450,000. The San Francisco bar pilots say they learned an important lesson after the Costco Busan hit the Bay Bridge, spilling oil into the bay. And after the Fabiola squeezed under the Golden Gate Bridge in a blanket of fog, the largest ship ever to enter the bay.
I don't believe anybody in their right mind had ever thought, even 10 or 15 years ago, that vessels would reach the size that they are now.
They say they need to add a second pilot on some ships to ensure safety.
The value of our service to the state of California and the protection of the environment, I'm not sure you can put a price on that.
But they have put a price on it. The bar pilots want to charge 50% more for ships they believe need 2 pilots. The shippers don't want to pay.
They have absolutely every right in the world to put as many pilots on board as they think they need to get a ship in.
Merchants representative Mike Jacobs says state law already dictates pilots' fees based on the size of the ship. The smallest ships coming into the bay are around 460 feet and 12,000 tons. The bar pilots get paid about $3,500. The newer, larger ships are 1,000 feet and longer, sometimes more than 100,000 tons, costing more than $20,000 to pilot. The Fabiola is 1,204 feet and 140,000 tons, costing more than $34,000. The shippers say the added payment for the larger ships is enough to pay the second pilot. And Jacob points out each pilot makes the same amount each year, no matter how much work they do.
Those individual pilots that are working that ship, last year the first pilot on, he made $450,000. The second pilot on made $450,000. Pilot at home eating peanut butter and jelly sandwich that week made $450,000. That's what they're paid to do.
Assembly member Fiona Mall sponsored a bill last year to set the rate for a second pilot. She eventually withdrew the measure. But while the bill was still under consideration, the pilots started charging the extra fees prematurely, and they made what the shippers perceived as a threat. How serious was that threat not to bring in a ship? What kind of a step was that?
It was unprecedented.
The cargo ship Norma, 1,145 feet long, was steaming toward San Francisco. The Shipping Association says the head of the bar pilots, Captain Horton, threatened not to bring in the Norma or any of the larger ships. The I-Team obtained an email Horton wrote to the Port of Oakland. If we can't charge for the extra pilot service, I doubt we'll ever bring those ships in.
There was not an actual threat.
Horton tells us he was simply trying to convey his safety concerns and that the shippers initially agreed to pay.
It was strongly worded because I thought that we had an agreement.
The state stepped in and 2 bar pilots brought the Norma to port without additional charges.
Rules and Regulations Committee.
The Ship Owners Association asked for an investigation from the Board of Pilots Commissioners, the state agency that regulates and licenses San Francisco's bar pilots.
I don't know what to make of that. Perhaps it was a threat. Perhaps it was just an offhand comment. I was not there. I have seen the email.
The commission released its report on the incident, basically a narrative of what happened, but it failed to mention Horton's email.
There was some reference to the communications. The crux of the investigation was to have the background.
The shipping merchants believe the threat needed to be looked at more closely by the board.
I would like to think that if, their state regulator had been asked to do a report to go through all the facts and tell us what actually happened and put those in a context, that they would do that. Unfortunately, they chose to completely ignore the facts in their report.
Still, based on the board's report, the Attorney General released an opinion in April saying the bar pilots cannot charge for a second pilot. It would take new legislation for them to collect more fees.
This is brand new for us. These are the largest ships ever to visit the west coast of North America.
So the pilots are back at it again, asking legislators to approve payment for a second pilot. This time, they have Assembly member Sondre Swanson of Oakland sponsoring the bill. He says he'd like to see them compensated for a second pilot, but he doesn't want them deciding when a second pilot is needed.
Should public safety be left to their discretion? I think public safety should be left to the discretion of the legislature, who is responsible to protect the public.
And if his bill doesn't pass, Swanson says the safety of the bay is at risk.
If they don't get compensated and we don't pass a bill that requires there to be 2 pilots, is there a chance that maybe we might have 1 pilot on a super vessel that requires 2? There's always that chance. That's a chance I don't think we can afford to have.
The pilots point out they're not being paid with tax dollars, but by wealthy shipping merchants owned mostly by foreign companies. The merchants say if they have to pay the pilots more, there's a good chance the cost will be passed on to the consumer, of course. If you have a tip for our next investigation, email me through the iTeam page at abc7news.com or call me at 1-888-40-ITEAM. Dan, Carol?
We all watch these ships come and go. It's interesting to know what's going on behind the scenes.
It's a whole separate culture, a small group of these pilots. It's really interesting.
Thanks, Dan, very much.